welcome everybody to what is actually the inaugural Black History Month lecture for the Faculty of Law. We have had events, of course, in Black History Month. This is our first lecture. Thank you again. Thank you all very much for coming out on a Friday evening, the first of the month, so payday. We're very pleased to have you all here in the room, and of course to those online, a very warm welcome. Just to say, the toilets, for those of you in the room, are if you leave the room and go left and then turn left again, you'll find a corridor with the toilets. And we're not expecting any fire alarm tests. So if you hear anything of that nature, stand up, you know the drill, walk calmly to your nearest fire exit. So my name is Iola Solanki. I am the Jacques Delors Professor in European Union Law, and also now the Associate Dean for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion in the Faculty of Law. And I am very capably assisted by Clara Elod, who is the EDI officer in the Faculty of Law. And I just want to say initially a very big thanks to Clara for organising this event. And I also want to say a very, very, very big welcome to our speaker today, who is Melissa Browne. So Melissa and I have known each other for a couple of years. We first met in April 2022, so literally a couple of years, when I was invited to chair a commission called Living Black at University. This commission had been set up by Unite the Union following a survey on the experiences of Black students at university. And the results of the survey were quite dire. And so Unite decided that in order to ensure that there was some level of implementation, there had to be a commission constituted of those who had responsibility for living, housing, accommodation on campuses at university. So they brought together an amazing commission of including people from the Office of the Independent Adjudicator, from different universities across the country, and Melissa was one of the commissioners. So the first time I had the pleasure of meeting her was in around April 2022, and Melissa is going to tell you all about the Living Black at University Commission and some of the work that she's been doing at Kent as a result of it, maybe some of the things that we could think about doing here in Oxford. But I brought about one example for you. So this is a handbook, and it's called a Cultural Services Toolkit, and it's something that was created by Newcastle University as a result of the Living Black at University Commission. So that's just one example, and Melissa has a ton of other examples that she will share with you. So I should say that Melissa is a waymaker, and I say that because she is the Deputy Director of Commercial Services and Estates at the University of Kent. And I think I'm correct in saying that she is the only Black woman in the country to hold this position. So for all of those out there who have thought that there was no future direction for them in professional services, that estates and security, etc., were a bastion of white manhood, Melissa is here to show you that actually things can change. So she's held many leadership roles, not just at the University of Kent, but mainly in operations and management in the education and student accommodation sector. As well as being the Deputy Director of Estate at the University of Kent, she is also the chair-elect of CUBO. Have any of you heard of CUBO? No, one person. I have either. CUBO is the Association of College and University Business Officers. So it incorporates those who are responsible for housing, for estates, for finance, etc. Across the country. We do have a CUBO representative at the university who sadly isn't here this evening, but Melissa will be the chair of that organisation next year. At the moment, she's leading CUBO's learning and development strategy, so as to support personal and professional development. And I think it's fair to say that Melissa's appointment at Kent is really an indication of how seriously they are taking the whole issue of diversity in higher education. As she will explain to you, it really is important as we set about widening participation on campus, not just at the undergraduate level, but also at the postgraduate level, that we do try to understand the unique challenges that Black students will face, not just during their transition to university life, but also during university life. I experienced this myself decades ago when I first went to university. Despite living in London and staying in London to go to university, when I arrived at university in London, I still felt somewhat uncomfortable and unable to find in that part of London the services that I needed and the foods that I need. Now, I was lucky. I could just take a long bus ride home. But for students who are going to different parts of the country where there are fewer, there's a smaller Black population, and so there are fewer services, it's imperative that universities recognise this and start to think about ways of making them feel more comfortable on campus. As I said when I was chairing the commission, for me, there's a direct link between the way in which Black students feel in university housing and their performance in the classrooms. When children are young, we know that if there are problems at home, those will be reflected in the classroom. I think exactly the same applies at the university level. If students are not comfortable in their university housing, that will certainly reverberate when they are in classroom at university and will have an impact on their performance and so the awarding gap. So today, Melissa is going to treat us to her experiences, and she's going to highlight best practices from her 15+ years of experience in higher education. And in particular, she's going to explore strategies that universities can action in order to implement and foster a welcoming environment. So with that, Melissa, over to you. Thank you.
Can I just say, I was just watching Iola, because when I met Iola and she's a professor, I was like so astounded by how eloquent and wonderful she is. And she was a fantastic chair. She really took us forward. So she kind of took away my thunder with my introduction a little bit, but I want to thank you so much for having me here today. My name's Melissa Browne, and as you said, I'm the Deputy Director of Commercial Services and Estates at the University of Kent. And you would have seen me kind of go, oh, I was told by someone that I was the only Black female deputy director, and it shocked me. I wasn't happy by it. They said, aren't you happy by it? But I wasn't happy by it. In fact, it makes me quite sad. But at Kent, when I had my interview, half of the questions was on commercial aspects and half of the questions was on EDI, because it's so important. I look after accommodation, sport, conference and events, catering, and also marketing. And if my boss is away, everything else. And everything that I do, I make sure EDI, sustainability, runs through it as well. And if you're online, I whispered sustainability. I'm chair-elect of an association called QBO, and QBO is an association for commercial and campus professionals. And we have 127 institutions, and you are one of them, and 1,600 individual members. And each of those members, when they come to conference, when we meet and we group, are really focused on campus experience and how we can also make it commercial. But there's a real link between making a sense of belonging and making people feel like they're wanted, also with commerciality. And I'm the commissioner, and very recently became the deputy chair of Living Black at University Commission. But the role that I'm most proud of is I'm a mother of 2 boys who are 23 and 21, and often in the commission meetings when I've spoken about them, I've started to sob. So today I'm not talking about my children today. And I would like to personally thank Professor Iola for inviting me here today to discuss this, because this is such an important topic about how we can create welcoming, inclusive campus environments, and it's so important. I had the pleasure to work with Professor Iola, and as she said, she was the first chair, and what a fantastic chair she was. She drove us, and we were not leaving that room until we had actions. We had actions because there was a lot of discussion. Now, I want to make it clear I'm not an expert, but what I am is an individual, and I'm hoping everybody in this room as well is an individual that's determined to make their campuses a place where students and staff can thrive because they feel that they're valued. And I'm excited to be here today because you have a unique collegiate model that offers each college the opportunity to make a real impact. Some people could see it as a barrier, but actually I see it as a moment of opportunity. And what I'll be discussing today are things that you can do yourselves to create this inclusive environment. And maybe you can do it individually or you can do it collaboratively. But my hope is at the end of this presentation, and I always like to start with a hope, right? Is that you will spark a fire in yourselves and you'll use it. And you'll use that fire to make sure that you use your role to emphasize how important EDI is and inclusion and create a more supportive campus. So there's a reason why I have notes, by the way. I talk a lot. I once had a presentation at a conference on this subject and I was meant to do 8 minutes. Do you remember? And I went on for half an hour. So I have notes today because it's Friday and you all need to go home as well. But can I ask a question? Has anybody read the report, the LBU report? And the answer could be no, that is fine. Well, as we're going through the actual slides, you'll see there's QR codes that you can use, so get your phones out. And after this, please do take a read of it. But what I'm going to try to do is give a bit of a summary. So, the transition. So as we think about the transition to university, it's really important to recognize how challenging this experience can be for students. The shift into this new environment comes with adjustment stress, significant environmental changes, and often a lack of immediate social support. Research from GSL reports, Unite, they highlight these pressures that affect students' mental health and well-being during this critical transitional period. Now, if we consider the transition, specifically for Black students, there's an additional layer of complexity that comes into play. For many Black students, arriving at university, especially a prestigious and traditional institution as Oxford, can amplify feelings of isolation. And I have to admit, when I was coming here to speak, when I was asked, I hesitated. I felt an imposter. And one of the things that can happen to Black students in certain spaces or courses, this feeling of isolation can lead to a heightened sense of feeling like an outsider or an imposter, and as if they don't belong. The experience is often compounded by the reality of navigating a predominantly white institution where students might not immediately see themselves. They won't see themselves in their peers, they won't see themselves in their staff, or the traditions around them. And these feelings can create added stress on top of the usual pressures of university life. When students feel isolated, their academic experience and mental health can suffer. It's essential for us as leaders, as educators, as peers, to be aware of this context. And that is why building an inclusive environment is so important. So, in 2022, the Commission, Unite students published the LBU report. And there are, again, I keep stressing this report, there are 10 recommendations. I started to go through them actually to think, should I go through the recommendations? And then the PowerPoint was 49 slides. So the answer to that was no. But what this report captured was findings that confirmed negative Black student experiences in their accommodation and how that negativity experience significantly impacted their student journey and academic success. And there was no other report like it. There isn't one. There hasn't been one that's been conducted. Please read it. And what they did was they assembled a national commission, and I love that. It makes me feel like a bit like an X-Men. And they assembled us together, a group of individual organizations focused on creating meaningful change. The commission we come from a diverse array of organizations and university. The charity Student Minds, I don't know if any of you have heard of Student Minds, fantastic. Advanced HE, Newcastle University, University of Leeds, Cuba, Unipol, just to name a few. And the purpose of the commission was so clear. We aim to respond at a national level to the pressing issues faced by Black students and take actionable steps that support both university and private student providers. And we didn't just want to talk. We wanted to make sure that we gave the tools to other universities and organizations. The scope of the work was focused specifically on improving the accommodation experience of Black students. However, 2 years on, we've moved into phase 2, and we're focused on expanding the effectiveness. And we really wanted to look at how could we make this mission last longer. So we've partnered with Cuba, and our focus now is not only on accommodation, but we're looking at the whole campus. And today you're going to see some examples of how that's worked in other universities. The findings, which I will summarize in the upcoming slide of the report, are challenging, and at times they're difficult to hear. However, they won't be surprising to those familiar with the sector or who have lived the Black experience. So these are the 5 themes that I just want to go through today. So safe, comfort, and belonging. Only 43% of Black students reported feeling a sense of belonging in their accommodation, compared to 61% of their white peers. Black students often describe feeling like they are out of place in their own accommodation. Many students encounter distressing situations such as racial slurs, name calling. They often feel there's little support available to help them process and address these incidents. Also, we've heard of cases where there's been racial profiling from security. My son, who was at university, had that himself. And there are so many instances where they've gone to staff or they've gone to speak to someone about it and the person didn't know what to do. Environment. Over a quarter, 28% of Black respondents shared that they cannot access culturally relevant services close to where they live. And I just want to make a personal note on this. I moved to Canterbury about a year ago. I have natural hair right now, which I quite like. I love it. But a year ago, my hair was straight. I had it relaxed. But when I moved to Canterbury, there wasn't a hairdresser that I could use. There wasn't one. I started asking Black students where they were getting their hair done. And they were actually doing it in their bedrooms because there wasn't anyone that could actually do their hair. And so what I ended up doing was walking into a barber's one day. I had too much things to be doing, too much work to be doing, and just shaved my hair off. And I shaved my hair in June, and this is the product of it now, which I actually very like. Thank you very much. However, that's to show you it's just one less thing to worry about. Now that's for me, but imagine students are doing that while they're studying as well. Another important point is about diversity or lack thereof amongst accommodation staff. When staff diversity doesn't reflect the diversity of our student body. Again, in my career, I've been an accommodation manager, and on welcome week, I would stand at the door and I'd welcome everyone, of course, but there would always be a Black mother and a Black father that would run directly to me and say, will you look after my baby, please? Will you look after her? And then what would happen is I would become, again, the point of the person to say, do you know where the West Indian food is? Do you know where the African food is? Because there just wasn't that information. So wherever I've worked, I've always curated for actually everybody that's in the accommodation so that they would know exactly where they could get their food and their hair products and etc. So diversity in staff is so important. And that's not just in the accommodation, that's in mental health services and etc. Almost a quarter, 23% of Black students disagreed with the statement. There are clear and accessible policies promoting equality, diversity, and inclusion in student accommodation, compared to just 11% of white students. This is a significant difference, and indicates that for Black students, these policies often feel invisible or inaccessible. What's more troubling is that many Black students reported they wasn't even sure how to actually report racism. They wasn't even sure if there was any policies that were related to addressing racism. And even when policies do exist, Black students frequently felt there was a disconnect between what was written and what actually happened. Experiences of racism. When we look at the experiences of racism reported by Black students in their accommodation, and when you read the report, you'll find it's really concerning. I could have filled this page with experiences, and it's so distressing. Over a half of Black students surveyed that they shared that they had personally been victims of racism in their accommodation. 64% of all respondents reported witnessing racist incidents, and these are isolated incidents only with students. Some were reportedly from staff as well. On a more positive note, there are instances where racism was actively being confronted. Half of all survey respondents, including 40% of Black respondents, reported witnessing staff stepping in to address racism. Additionally, 2/3 of students, with 57% of Black students, saw other students confronting racist attitudes. And this is a powerful example of potential of peer and staff and student support. It's something that we can build on. And the last theme is mental health. When it comes to mental health, the impact of racism on Black students is both significant and deeply concerning. 3/4 of Black students report that the racism has affected their mental health, with many feeling distressed in their own accommodation. And the stress is made worse by the lack of available support and by the difficulty of finding counsellors who truly understand the impact of racism on mental health, whether through lived or professional experience. And again, at Kent, my role, I have a lot of students, I have a lot of staff that will contact me directly to speak to me about their experiences. I have my day job, but because of myself, I've realized how important representation is. I told you the tears might come. So, the commission resources. All right, let's go back a bit, giving you a preview. Oh, why is it done that? Oh, going forward and back. There we go. Excuse me. There we go. We're fine. Thank you so much. So, commission resources. So there are 10 key recommendations that I won't go through today. You've got the summary of them, but these recommendations are vital steps towards creating supportive environments for Black students in higher education. And again, you've got the QR codes to the resources and also to the report. In the first year of Living Black at University Commission, we wanted to ensure that we made steps to drive meaningful change for Black students and diversity inclusion data, allowing them to make informed, data-driven changes. So please, has everyone had a chance? And it's really fantastic. I mean, you've seen the booklet that's there. I'll talk to you more about what's in the report. Yeah.
I suppose those online can just Google Living Black at University.
Yeah, and it'll come up straight away. It's on the Unite Students website. But after this, I can give the presentation. Yeah. So, in March 2023, we held our first LBU conference at Newcastle. It was created specifically to address recommendation 1. And that was that universities and accommodation providers should collaborate to eliminate racism from every area of student experience, including within student housing. The energy and commitment in Newcastle, it was brilliant, wasn't it? It was such a brilliant conference, set a strong foundation. And last month, we followed it up with a second conference at my home, the University of Kent. This time, over 100 attendees gathered, each with a clear focus to further enhancing the lived experience of Black students. This year's event was opened by our VC, and the whole event was aimed at building trust and advancing more equitable practices across student accommodation and the whole student experience. Sessions included a deep dive into cultural competency, inclusive leadership, strategic planning, and ways to foster open and honest communication with our students. And we can't wait for the third conference. We have a number of universities who already put their hands up to say they would like to hold it. And I hope that next year a few delegates from the University of Oxford will attend. I will make sure I send out that invite. But also, maybe you might want to hold the conference yourself. So the first thing that I would like to do is to talk about, I have a couple of universities, including Kent, some of the things that they've done in action to the recommendations. So Living Black at Kent. So In 2022, In 2022, we established a Living Black at University working group at Kent, bringing together a diverse group of stakeholders from across the university to create a more inclusive campus. The whole university initiative included partners from accommodation, UPP, Unite Students, the Kent Union as well, catering, directors of academic strategy and education, the international office. I'm going to read them all because it's fantastic. Res Life, sport, security, communications, and on and on. This is one of the most attended meetings at our university, with over 30 people that come, and we have actually gone up to about 45 people at some cases. Very hard to chair. Because of this collaborative approach, we've been able to make significant progress in the last 18 months. So what have we achieved? So data. There's a set of questions that were asked in the Living Black at University. And what we did was we took those questions, and every university can do it, by the way, and we put them in our exit survey, our accommodation exit survey. This invaluable data will tell us how our students feel at Kent, and that's all students, but we're able to use that data to see how our Black students are feeling. So we currently have 2 years data at the moment, and we're starting to analyse it. And also what we'll be doing is working with our EDI department to put together a 3-year plan. What we also did was we launched 3 Little Birds. We've got a Caribbean cuisine on campus. One of the outlets has Caribbean food, patties, rice and peas, chicken, yum. And how that came about was the catering team. I went to them and I said, I'd like some more diverse food. Could we try some African, Nigerian food? And they were really scared. And sometimes people see scared as people not wanting to do it. What they didn't want to do was do it wrong. So what I did was I contacted Grace Foods, and anyone could do that. I'm willing to share those details. And Grace Foods came, worked with the team and showed them how to cook the food. I then put on a tasting event and invited Black students and anyone to come. And I did it within reading week, so no one thought anyone would turn up. 150 students, students will always show up, but food. 150 students turned up, tried the food, loved the food, and now we have it in one of our outlets, and it's extremely popular. Welcome week and in arrivals, we worked with our BAME staff network to also play a vital role in supporting student arrivals, creating a warm and welcoming environment. And normally you put a call out and you say who would like to work arrivals, right? But we actually targeted certain groups of diversity to get them to be at the airport, to greet people, just like I greeted people when I was working in accommodation. Training. We launched staff-focused, culturally aware EDI training course, and our first cohort that we put for it was our security team. And it was eye-opening for them. And now our security team actually hold cups of tea. They're now nice and fluffy now, our security team, cups of tea with the staff, with the students, with the staff. And actually, I think they're starting to realise how stopping a student, why are they stopping that student? Where is that coming from? We published our accommodation allocation policy, very outward facing so our students can see it. We created a behaviour charter. So we've created a student behaviour charter, and you'll see it when you read the report, it's one of the recommendations to do that. So basically tell students before they arrive, this is the behaviour we expect of everyone. And we also created a welcome booklet, especially for Black students, that had cultural relevant services. Now, you really need to speak to students, because when we curated the actual booklet, in the first year, we showed them the booklet. They loved it because also we built it with the students. We asked them for their information. They fed into it. After the first year, though, we said to them, is this good? They were, it's boring. It's rubbish. We don't like it anymore. So what we've done, we've gone that step further. What we should have done in the first place, and we've actually got space on our website, which is, as you can see, our Black student guide. So you can actually go there and actually look at what we've done. And it has blogs on there. Our students we signpost them to shops or places to eat, places of faith as well. Religion is something as well that people do not know where their churches are, for them to commune with their people and need the support. So, University of Southampton. This September, the University of Southampton launched an exciting new project called You Belong at University, and it's been influenced by the work at Living Back at University. The initiative is designed to help Black students feel a sense of belonging right from the start. Their welcome induction now includes, again, a student behavioural charter before they even arrive, setting clear expectations about community values and behaviours. But the standout addition has been a Black Freshers Guide, a comprehensive resource created by Southampton's award-winning GAP team with input from Black students. It covers everything from local amenities to recommended societies, and it's tailored to meet the needs of Black students joining university. They've also embedded blogs throughout their website, offered tips on Black hair care, beauty, food spots, and other essentials, making it really easy for Black students to find their way and what they need in a new location when they arrive. One less thing to worry about. And these additions remove some of the worries around settling in, allowing students to focus on enjoying their student experience from day one. And I really want to show you this. So the universities I've shown here, they were at the conference presenting, and this one actually blew us away. So this is the University of Nottingham have created something called the Black Sport Collective, and it's an inspiring initiative that's designed to unite all Black students interested in sport and fitness. So this is where we're taking it beyond accommodation. The collective provides a vital support system, and it's inspired to motivate members to excel in their athletic pursuits. The creation of the Black Sport Collective was driven by research at the University of Nottingham, which highlighted that many Black students felt they couldn't be their authentic selves around non-Black peers. This was often due to cultural differences, leading to a phenomenon known as code switching, a bit like masking your true self. Furthermore, more Black students reported experiences of racism, discrimination, microaggressions, which were often masked as humour within sports environments. So there was a clear lack of belonging amongst Black students, compounded by inadequate representation within the university. And the findings indicated that the Black students were more likely to engage in clubs and activities if there were other Black students would be present. So to address these challenges, the Black Sport Collective organises regular events and activities that foster community and connection. They identify and signpost relevant programs, campaigns, funding, opportunities for Black students, while building partnerships with organisations that can offer additional opportunities. Oops. Going the wrong way, sorry. So, the impact. The impact of the Black Sport Collective has been remarkable. And I really wanted to show you this because sometimes we can say we've done this, but we don't really look at the impact. And that's what we really need to do. There has been a 63% increase in the number of Black students engaging with the University of Nottingham sports programme. 63%. In addition, 85% of engaged Black students reported feeling part of the community. And an impressive 98% expressed that they felt they belonged at university. Look at that. These outcomes reflect the transformative power of community and representation in creating supportive environments for Black students. So, as a roundup, what are the key things that you could do at Oxford to create an inclusive campus? So the first thing I would say is read the report. Please get the report and read it. It can be quite distracting, but you really need to read it. Look at the resources that are out there. The website for Living Back at University has a lot of what I've spoken about today and more. Unipol have done a number of things. ASRA has done a number of things. There's loads of associations out there that have. You can learn from them. Why don't you create your own Living Back at University working group from stakeholders from different colleges or within your college itself? One of the things we did at our first meeting is that we actually just read the report and had a discussion. Just have a discussion about it. You could have a lecture like this and talk about the findings, because what will happen is when you have a discussion about it, you will feel you have to do something. To do nothing just won't feel right. And what I would also say about the working group and anyone that does get involved in it, don't put the focus or the work just on one person. It shouldn't just be on the EDI lead or the person that's chairing it. It's everyone's role. I look after commercial. Some people say, why are you so interested? Because it's the right thing to do. And actually, it is the commercial thing to do because there's more sense of belonging. Students won't drop out, but don't we want our students to have the best experience? You should talk to your Black students as well. The reason why we use the questions, because it's all right for us to say, oh, I think they need this. But if you actually put the questions in your exit survey, you will start to have a feeling of what they want. And when you do focus groups, pay them. We're asking people sometimes to share their guts, their pain. And this is for all underrepresented groups and other groups. Pay them for their time. It's quite hard to share, but actually make them feel what I tend to do is loads of food, loads of food, loads of drink. And also I give them some money as well. And get them involved. So on our Living Back working group, actually I've got 3 chairs on there because it's quite a tiring thing to do and can be quite disheartening when you don't think there's movement. And one of the chairs is our union. We have the Union, African and Caribbean Society. It's part of the group as well. In the actual report itself, so we've got the report and then we have a 1 year on LBU report. You should read it, it's great, it's got lots of case studies in there. There's actually an LBU self-assessment audit. Take the audit. Take the audit, see where you fare. When we did it at Kent, we were appalled. And I'm on the commission. I was absolutely shocked where we were. You can't fix this overnight as well. You can't. But actually take the audit and you will see where are you. So I've said use the LBU questions in the exit survey. I'm making myself laugh because I've written again, talk to your students. Look at your induction, your welcome inductions through the eyes of your Black students. Does it encourage integration, building community? And that's for all underrepresented groups as well. What's your induction saying about you? Normally it's telling you what you don't want them to do, what you don't want them to bring. It tells them a lot about that, but what actually is telling you about the environment, the culture, what they'll have, the community, how you expect people to behave together. Look at the food you serve. Is it diverse? Would you eat it? Would you enjoy it? Number 9, talk to your students. Create a student behavioural charter. If you haven't got one, create one. Because actually it sets the tone for you, for your staff, for the students. And please come to the next conference. Connect with other institutions. That day was one day 2 weeks ago where, I'm not joking, the VC is extremely busy, but she was there for a long time because the atmosphere in the room, the students were sharing, which was hard to hear, but they were also so happy to see there was one day, one room that was focused on them across the sector. So those are 10 things, and I could go on. This is the reason why I have Iola sitting there saying, come on. But the last thing to do is try to do something that makes Oxford an inclusive campus. And as I conclude today, I want to emphasize the importance. And at our recent Living Black at University conference, our Vice Chancellor shared powerful insight that truly captured the work that lies ahead of us. And I just want you to read her words. At the University of Kent, our vision is one of transformation, empowering our students, nurturing their potential, providing an environment where they can thrive, succeed, regardless of their background. Our ambition moving forward is clear. We want every Black student at the University of Kent to feel that they belong, that their voice is heard, and that they have the opportunity to flourish and achieve their fullest potential. And to achieve this, we need a collective effort across departments, disciplines, institutions, and the wider higher education sector. And in conclusion, this was at the conference, let me say this: the work we do today and in the days, months, and years ahead is not easy, but it's necessary. This is shared work. This is a shared journey, one in which each and every one of us has a role to play. By working together, we can create an educational environment that every Black student feels empowered, valued, and supported to achieve their aspirations. Really powerful words, huh? And I'm sure you'll agree. So I'm really excited to see what the University of Oxford could do to create this environment across all your colleges. And I and the rest of the Commission and Cuba are all here to support you, and I will come back anytime you want. Thank you for listening. And now I will open the floor if there's any questions.
Thank you. Melissa, that was, as I expected, an amazing talk. And I just want to show you, as I mentioned earlier, we do now have at the university level our own EDI strategy. And in line with the Southampton campaign, we also talk about everybody belongs. So if anybody hasn't seen that, then it is available online. And it is a very inspiring document that sets the framework for us all, wherever we are, to think about what we can do across the range of equality, diversity and inclusion challenges that we and other universities face. Okay, now I'd like to open the floor. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask Melissa, or any comment on anything that she said? She's thrown out many challenges, some ideas, some opportunities for university, colleges and departments. Is there anything online coming through, Clara?
Not yet, but
Not yet, but Clara will continue. Okay, so I will then start. You've given us lots of examples. Which is your favourite and why?
My favourite example is, to be honest, starting the working group. And the reason why that's so important, you can't do this alone. And getting everybody into the room, and that's from student success, so from the academic side and also the professional services side, it's actually making sure that this initiative is running through the whole university, so everybody's on board. So I think that's my favourite one. The one currently at Kent that has caused the most excitement, I believe, is the food. I do think the food.
Well, also.
Yeah, I do think the food, and I also think I'm told to say one. I can never say one. And also the cultural relevant services, telling people where they can go and buy their plantain from, their haricot, their seasonings, where they can get their hair products. That has been where they can get their hair braided. That's been really, I know, important. So you asked for one, I give.
That's okay. Thank you. So the working group, I really like that example as well. So what was your first step to establishing that working group? And bear in mind, Oxford has a very specific governance structure. So a working group could be constituted at the university level, but that might take more time. So probably the easiest places to do that would be either in the college or in a department or faculty. So how did you start that conversation about establishing a working group on this topic?
The first thing that I did was I wrote a list of touch points, student touch points. So accommodation, it could be sport, it could be student welfare, it could be anywhere where I know students go to. And then on the other side, on the academic side, I'd look for, so as I said, student success is a team that we have that does a lot with EDI and students. So I'd contacted them all, sent the report to them and said, I'd like a meeting. Now, at Kent, when I arrived there, they already knew about the report, so it was a lot easier there. But I have heard, as part of the commission, that sometimes it's not easy at other organisations. So what has had a lot of people have had to do is bang down the door to present at EDI committees. That's been something else I've done as well, because what you need to sometimes do is raise awareness. So I'd say send the report out, present the report, and commission can give an actual presentation, give you one to use, and then just put a meeting together and ask people to come and discuss. Gather people to talk about it first. Don't think about your actions to start with, do that. So yeah, that's the way that I would get started, would be send it out to people, maybe do a presentation if they don't come to you. I'm quite bold. I like to contact VCs. and say, can I have a word? But I'm like that, nothing to lose. And actually, they will listen. They do want to know. But sometimes when you're the VC, you're very far away from the front line. So, and I've had a positive response to that. So go bold with it.
We might just get you back to speak to our VC.
And as the VC, I overrun I missed the first section of your talk, so apologies, but thank you so much for coming.
No, it's okay.
Sharing your wonderful insight. We'd love to have you back. It's great that you flagged the new strategy, which actually is an example of the university finally doing something that is pan-collegiate and university, so that we have a sort of uniform approach to how we want to, again, do much better, that can be taken on by departments and colleges, again, with some common templates and visions. So let's see that we can deliver on that. My question to you is around alumni, because I'm really struck with the listening, and I do as best as I can as VC. I just do dog walks, do student breakfasts, and different ways that I can keep touch in close with the students and also find out just a little bit what's going on. When I was running a college here and a department before, it was really important to me to reach out to particularly Black students who've been here 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. We're very fortunate, obviously, we have very good connectivity with our alumni base, just to get a temporal sense about what the experience would be. Because the current student experience, it changes very quickly to the students, and to just get that barometer about what are the things that we've just never been able to budge on, and that students felt were awful 15 years ago, and we're still finding it's awful now, and where have we got some traction and some improvement. So I just wonder whether you might have said this in your presentation. So I was asking sort of about that and what more we could do collectively around learning from Arla, who would very much, I think, like to be listened to and to give back, and then that gives us a good sense of things. The other thing that struck me about the inclusion bit, and this is more at the college level, is just the physical environment. We have these beautiful old colleges with very heavy portraits everywhere, and just at a very implicit level, the actual just student experience living environment is of a certain time for many of our places. And just doing some really, again, through listening, some really small stuff made a big difference about just feeling welcome, and that this place, the place was moving towards them rather than having to become like us, so to speak, that we were in the 16th century. And just how much that has been, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experiences around the physicality of our environments for our students and the importance of that. So two questions, if I may.
Can I say something? This is why I love having a discussion about this, because so the alumni, that hasn't even come up yet in our conversations. And actually, I think it's a really important part, because we've got the LBU questions and we're asking current students. So for instance, at Kent, we've now got 2 years data. But actually, if we'd gone out to our alumni, we would have had that data from year 1. And also, I said in the beginning, I've got 2 children that I don't talk about on this subject because I start crying. But the experiences that my children have had are the experiences that I have had. So the alumni that you've had 10 years ago, the themes will be the same, right? So I think that's a brilliant idea, and I will be taking it back to the commission to say that why aren't we just going back to our alumni? We've got the data, they are there, and you're right, alumni have a connection, whether it's good, whether they have a good experience or bad experience, they are willing to give their advice. Yeah, they want things to change, and they'll want to change for the better. So one of the things you could do is to use the LBU questions and just send it out to them via the alumni department to get that experience. So you have that almost information to kind of steer your direction. Yeah, take the play. And then the second one about the environment. So again, the environment hasn't been something we've looked at as part of the commission, because we've just talked about the environment such as staff representation. But I went to Royal Holloway the other day. They have quite traditional, beautiful buildings, but the portraits maybe don't look like some of the students that are there. And it's a discussion that, I understand needs to be had. It hasn't been something we started to look at. So I do think this is the reason why we need more universities to join the cause. We had 49 institutions that came to the conference, and we want more institutions to come, because just like when we started talking, the model here is different. It's a different model to other universities, but the themes are the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question about the Nottingham case. And I was curious whether you knew what the level of belonging or sense of belonging was before that sports project started. And, you know, the journey, or if you have a greater insight into why that worked so well. And our VC is very keen on sports initiatives and so on. And that is something that we could think about as a tool of integration and drawing more Black students into that. We don't know that our Black students feel sufficiently empowered to take part in various kinds of sports. So I would quite like to know what the actual journey was, what it is that made them feel they belong. And when you say 98, was it 95% said they belong?
98.
98.
So I would highly recommend the gentleman that led that project. I can't remember his surname, but his name's Derek, and he is phenomenal. I've only shown you, I think, 3 slides. He had about 20 at the conference going through that journey. So I would advise that if you can, at some point, you can even speak to him, and he will tell you about what the journey was. I don't know where their starting point was. I only know where they actually ended up with the data that he gave. But what I would say is, what we can see throughout the report, and also what's being discussed in other institutions, and I think I talked about it when I talked about masking, is that when people are around people who are like themselves, they don't need to pretend to be anything other than they are. And so that gives them a sense of comfort, and that gives them a sense of belonging. They don't feel that they have to talk in a certain way. If you hear me around my hairdresser, my accent is completely different. She's from the Caribbean, and I become Caribbean. And so there is something about that sense of belonging, being amongst your roles, where you can just relax. Especially if you are, I can imagine, I must admit, when I was thinking about coming to present here, my imposter normally is over there, was standing right beside me all the way to on the train today, all the way here, because you have this feeling of, who am I to be presenting on this, who am I? And I think for some students who go to a prestigious university at Oxford, they will have that. How did I even get here? Did I get here just because I'm Black? Did I get here because of my intelligence? All of those type of questions. So to have a space where there are just Black people, and it's not to isolate anyone, it's not to hold anyone out, it's just for one football match, for one hockey game, to just relax and have one less thing to worry about. I think that's what I believe, and that's what I'm hearing. But also, I didn't get a chance to run through all the initiatives he did, but also what they did was to introduce students to sports they wouldn't do, such as fencing or maybe rugby or etc. And maybe they didn't feel that they could have done it if others were there, but because it was a Black initiative, they could shyly dip their toe in it, and then afterwards they've moved into maybe signing up for the society and etc. So I think I hope I answered your question, but
absolutely.
But there's something about not having to mask.
I have another question. Can I ask another?
Okay, go ahead.
So this is about this is not my question, but questions I sometimes face, which is about creating culturally relevant services, food, and food is, of course, highly political and politicized. The idea that if one does that, it creates sort of, food and other things, cultural practices, it creates certain kinds of ghettos, and in fact encourages students to live in their own racialized silos or religious silos, and that's not very helpful. They should really try to integrate with the majority, as it were. Now, of course, this is a very spurious argument. Why should one integrate? I understand that, but how would you react to this sort of an argument, especially when 2% of our students are Black? It's lower than the national average. So. I have certain ways of responding to that, but I would be very interested in knowing what you would say. And also, of course, in our case, we have 2 sorts of Black students, some from overseas, some from within Britain. And they face the environment, they encounter the environment somewhat differently. And going back to the Vice Chancellor's point about building and the built environment, all British cities remind us of histories that have been oppressive and extractive and so on. In Oxford, some of it is very much central and very visible, and have been the focus of very significant political turmoil, as it were. So that sort of feeds into all of this. So I just wondered how you would respond to that question of cultural integration versus creating cultural spaces that are separate, where you don't have to mask, where you can be yourself.
So I'll talk to the food first. You'll notice the theme with me. I look after catering. The food. I do think, so when we held our West Indian tasting event, it was for Black students, but it was open to everyone. And even now, everyone enjoys West Indian. Everyone enjoys food from Japan. Everyone enjoys food from India. So when you create another diverse, it's just creating another diverse food. There's something I was introduced to, which is called Nigerian puff-puffs. They are the most yummiest thing you've ever had. If you had them before, they are so yummy, so nice, right? So I think looking at the food from a diverse range, you know, and I think for organizations, if you're outsourced as well, just I don't know if you are here, it's in-house, but I say this for different models, making sure in your specifications you're really challenging your contractors about EDI, put that in there. But talking about the environment, this report said that Black students didn't feel happy in their environments because of they didn't have representation, there was racial slurs, when they had mental health issues, the person that was counselling them didn't understand their lived experience. So we're not asking, and this report isn't saying to stop, to segregate. It's actually saying just think, is there something more we need to be doing for that demographic of student? So it's not stopping anything else that's being done, it's actually doing more. So when we do our cultural relevant surveys, and we do send an email out to say, hi, can we have some Black students to help us with this? All international, again, it's about the it's about, for instance, international home student, different places within Africa and etc. Everyone's different. You can't treat them all the same, but we ask them to do focus groups so we can get a wide range. We're always constantly asking, are we getting it right? And we don't. And we have to change and we have to adapt. So as you can see with our website, it's great now, but in a couple of months' time, we will do another focus group. So we're always asking for the student voice to run through it. I don't think I've answered your question, but I'm trying. I think what it is do not think about you're creating ghettos by giving a demographic a space to talk with their peers about how they're feeling. You're not.
Thank you. We've got all the hands are going up now. We haven't got very much time left, so I've got a question at the back, and then one at the front and one there. Is there anything online, Clara? No. Okay, so we'll have 3 last questions then. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a question about accommodation. So I oversee a scholarship for Black British graduate students here at Oxford, and we've had some feedback from particularly PhD students getting quite frustrated about accommodation, which at Oxford has a huge shortage of accommodation. It becomes very expensive, and for DPhil students, particularly in their later years, they often end up having to go out to private landlords, and then they face the inevitable challenges of any kind of cross-section of landlords and things. They will experience racism and that kind of thing. And I think it's kind of interacted with perhaps not always feeling welcome at Oxford, not in, just as their same experience can be at Harvard. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts in terms of kind of best practice, really good examples you've seen over helping Black students feel welcome around accommodation, kind of what can be done to help.
Well, there's so much resource out there that you can signpost students to, and on our website, please go on there, because Student Minds have done lots of resources, but also Unipol as well. They've done lots of, as you know, it's a housing association. They've done lots of resources that I also think something that we do at Kent is that we have a landlords association meeting, which the head of accommodation goes to, and she will talk about living back at university and really raise awareness as well. So what would be the first thing that I would do in accommodation, and even with students that are in private, is to actually find out what the problems are and see if there's a way that you can address it through education. So that would be holding the landlords, bringing them in, sending out the report to them, They might not listen to that, but the one thing is they wouldn't want a university to discourage students from going in there. That's where you have your strength.
I think it's more private now.
Oh, it's the private landlord. Yeah. I don't have the answer now, but I'm sure, let's take details, because I'm sure amongst the commission, there will be someone who will be able to answer that. And I would really, please stay in touch. I mean, I give my details to everyone, and I say to everyone, this is a joint, a kind of a joint initiative. I might not have all the answers now, but there will be someone within our community, within our sector who does, and how they're doing it. And what we're trying to do on our website is to gather that all together. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your presentation. Mine isn't a question, but when it comes to the point you talked of on representation, my experience was one time I attended a PSI conference at the examination schools, and as I was walking, I found a portrait of one of the former Black ladies that had been at the institute. For me, it is the first time around Oxford that I saw such representation. I took a picture of it because as I was reading it, I was like, actually, I'm in the right place because I've never seen something like that. So maybe just putting, publishing little portraits of what some Black people have done that have gone to the university makes us feel like, okay, I'm not just alone. As you can notice, you're probably just maybe a few numbers here. So seeing just something in a room, in a conference hall, adds a lot to it.
So Kellogg College does have every Black History Month. They do have an exhibition of all of the women of colour, not just Black women, who have passed through Oxford. So, well, we're in November now, so they might have removed it, but it might still be there. But it's a good point because that's just Kellogg College, and it would be nice to see that all around campus. Good point.
Can I say something in response to that?
Just quickly.
Yeah, because a few years ago, I can't remember which year, about 5 years ago, Oxford did a project called Diversifying Portraiture, and there was an exhibition after that called The Full Picture that included a lot of former and current students and staff from minoritized backgrounds. And in the wake of that, I think most colleges dug up any painting they had of some had them but hadn't displayed them, of people from minoritized backgrounds, and those were put up on the walls. Many colleges have done this sort of a project. So if you go to Balliol, for example, they took photos of lots of people and so on. Maybe there are other examples that you can think of. So there have been some efforts, but I think it kind of died down a bit after that.
It needs another sort of exactly.
And I think sometimes we don't mind. I think sometimes the feeling can be, I'm glad I'm here on the 1st of November because I'm not here for Black History Month. You know, this conversation should happen
all the time.
You know, and actually we're talking, it's a student experience conversation, so it should happen all the time. And I think that from what I'm hearing from you is you saw a portrait that made you feel like you belong. And what I'm hearing here is we've got loads of those portraits. My thing is put them up. And you know, there are certain universities, I think LSE, I saw it on LinkedIn, Eat Spencer, they're naming a building after a Black woman that has been at LSE. There's things about looking at our buildings and thinking, can we rename them? But it's showing that you belong here. And we are celebrating past people who look like you came here too. So you're one of our people, right? It's giving that message.
Yeah. Thank you, Nandini. Sorry, I'm glad you made that. And then the very last question.
Thank you. Thanks so much for a fantastic, really thought-provoking talk. My question was actually a very good segue from what Nandini was saying. We've done this before, but maybe, you know, we need to revive it. So I love that you spoke about having EDI and sustainability built into everything you do. I think one of Oxford's problems is sustainability of brilliant things that we do. So kind of rather, you know, Clara doing fantastic things in law and Stephen doing fantastic things in forget your department. No, we all do our own things and we don't find out about it. I wonder if you had any advice about or kind of learnings of how to keep momentum and how to connect the dots for all the various different initiatives that you've seen or been involved in.
The reason why I'm smiling so hard is I'm sure when my colleagues actually can hear me say we've got all these initiatives and there's going to be someone that says they're not continuing, because I think that's a university thing. However, when you have a working group and you have chairs on there and you do not, it holds you accountable, having an action plan, having a someone that you're accountable to, right? And I know for the commission, we are for LBU, we are driving it forward, and we're always going out to caseworkers, putting out for case studies. So for instance, if you've got a working group, we would come to you and say, is there anything that's going on? So what I would suggest is, I don't feel like I'm saying it very eloquently, but what I would suggest is you need to put together a group of people, not one or two, so it's sitting on their shoulders, where it then starts feeding into all action plans such as race equality, Athena Swan. It starts feeding into things, and all of a sudden it becomes your university strategy. That's how you keep it going, by having something that said, this is our measure, this is our KPI. We did a thing in my department where I was very fascinated with EDI mandatory training and statutory training. So I was quite boring to some people, but I was fascinated by it. And I had the league table, and every meeting I would bring it up. We're currently at 98% for everything, because nobody wants to be at the bottom. And if that's going to be the way to get you to do it, I'm fine, you've done your training. But I think there needs to be, to start with, a discussion here, because you'll probably find there's loads of good stuff you're doing, but no one's shouting about it. So the students don't know about it. So it's probably best to start to say, what I find is not what you're doing wrong. Let's find out what we're doing right. Then let's start creating a website. But firstly, speak to the students, speak to your past students, and actually think, okay, what can we learn? And just keep it simple as well. That's another thing. Don't try to do everything. My head of accommodation, the chairs of the group, honestly, sometimes they're like, it's not moving too fast. And I always say to them, you're doing something in an area where nothing was done before. And if you speak to the students, even though they might say that book isn't the greatest book, they say, thank you for doing it for us. So I just think, I hope I answered your question, but I would get a working group together. Because you're different colleges, I would say do a working group with all the different colleges. That's what I personally would do. But if the other colleges aren't interested, I'm not saying they won't be, do it in your own and be the leader in it.
I like that. Be the leader in your college. And on that positive note, Melissa, thank you so much. I think you've inspired everybody here and everybody online by telling us about your work and the passion and enthusiasm with which you undertake such difficult work. And it clearly helps you to feel as if you're making a difference at Kent. And you certainly, I think, made a difference to us here at Oxford. So thank you once again for being the inaugural speaker for our Black History Month lecture. But as you say, Black History is not just a month, and neither are activities related to EDI. Thank you.